Here we are, the inaugural ride. I don't know what I'm going to call this channel yet. I've got a couple channels I've done in the past. One that I've got currently going, doing fishing videos. I don't do them as much as I used to. I was out fishing all the time a couple years ago. So what's the point? Man, there's motovloggers everywhere. Everybody's doing a motovlog. Well, not everybody, but people with motorcycles, you see them all over the place. Some of them have, you know, hundreds of thousands of subscribers. Some of them have tens of subscribers. What's the point? I don't know. Like, who are we to think that other people just want to listen to us talk shit all day on our motorcycles? Well, why not get in on some of that? Just to talk. So who am I? Well, my name's Mike. Right now, at the time of this recording, the channel is just called Bikin' Mike. My wife laughed at me on that. She said it was dorky sounding. I agree. Maybe I'm a dork. I've been riding for a very long time. I grew up in the hills of East Tennessee. And in those days, when I was growing up in the 80s, early 90s, nobody in my family had street motorcycles, but we all had dirt bikes, man. I remember growing up, my brother had always had a three-wheeler of some sort. That's before they outlawed, though, not outlawed, but stopped manufacturing on those for all the manufacturers. He always had three-wheelers, Honda three-wheelers, whatnot, and I always had the dirt bikes, like a Suzuki 125, if I remember right, or a 110. I don't remember the exact cubic centimeter displacement, but that's what we had, and I loved it, man. We didn't really necessarily have trails. I mean, we did. We had the barn road. I was fortunate enough to grow up on some property that my papaw, that's East Tennessee talk for grandfather. My papaw had bought a farm back in the 50s, and we had about 150 acres-ish, somewhere around there. We had fishing, we had cattle, we had hunting on the property, and best of all, we had lots and lots of forest, and my brothers and I would just tear through there on three-wheelers, and me on the dirt bike. That was my favorite thing to ride. Got in the Marines when I was 18, didn't ride for a long time. You know, a lot of my peers at the time had the sport bikes, or crotch rockets as they're affectionately called. I never got into it, the crotch rocket scene. Hell, at the time, I was just wanting a freaking some kind of ride at all. It was 21 before I even got my first car on my own. Well, that's a lie. I had one when I was 16. My Uncle Butch, I think he's probably going to watch this. And my Uncle Butch gave me my very first car. It was a 1979 Pontiac Sunbird that he ripped the motor out and put a little Chevy small block in it. Buddies of mine back then called it a pocket rocket. I don't know if that's what today's pocket rocket is. I think pocket rocket is now reserved for other things. I don't know if this light knows I'm even here. So what do? Do we wait for this thing? Or do we just go? I really don't want to wait around all day, but I don't know that it knows that I'm here. Lights in Tampa are pretty damn long, but this one's kind of going a little bit overboard, I think. Anyway, first car was a 1979 Pontiac Sunbird, like I said, Chevy small block engine. And man, I tore through the streets of South Knoxville on that thing. Just lead foot, 16 years old. Every ounce of money that I had was going to gasoline because I was just in it all the time. We had a little spot called 7 Dips that all the kids used to take their cars down. And the idea was 7 little hills, and you'd hit those hills as fast as you could. Not as fast and as safe as you could, but as fast as you could. And apparently one Sunday night when I was doing that, I had knocked the oil pan halfway off of it, and I didn't realize it until the next day. I drove to school just fine. Started my car up out after school. It sounded a little bit funny, but I drove it anyway because I'm 16, don't know dick about cars. And sure as shit, man, I blew the motor. Blew the motor on the way home. I was kind of scared. I didn't want to answer to anybody about what had happened. So I drove it all the way home and tried to play dumb. drove it home on a blown motor, man. I'd thrown the rods on some of the cylinders. I mean, this is a long time ago, so I couldn't tell you exactly how many. We're gonna break the law. Outlaws. Gonna be an outlaw here. I can't sit here all day. Anyway, I don't know why I got off on cars, seeing as how this is a motovlog, but anyway, at the time of being 21 years old, wanting my first ride, got that car, wasn't into motorcycles for a while. Didn't really think about it much. In fact, it wasn't until I was 25 years old and I moved out to Arizona, where I met the wife. I got another dirt bike, because I always liked dirt bikes, right? But we didn't have a whole lot of money. Young couple starting off. I was a mechanic on, I wasn't an aircraft mechanic yet. That's what I did in the Marines. But in the civilian world, I guess you got to have a license to do that kind of shit. But I didn't have a license, so I had to get in on the ground floor, and I was a mechanic on the fuel trucks that, let's back up. There was an air ambulance company. And the air ambulance company would fly people from the small town of Yuma, Arizona, to bigger hospitals in towns like Phoenix or San Diego, and they were constantly going. And so I ran the fuel trucks to those, and I did maintenance on those fuel trucks, swept the shop. In other words, I was the shop bitch for a long time. So we didn't have a whole lot of money. My wife at the time, she was, you know, entry-level nursing assistant, whatnot. So we had a couple kids, and yeah, any young couple, we're just starting off. So what did I do? I spent $500 and bought an old, like a 1982, I think it was an 82, something like that, an XR 200R. If you're not familiar with those motorcycles, those are some of my favorite dirt bikes ever. They were 4-stroke, so it was easy to put fuel in, didn't have to mix anything. That was before you could buy like pre-mix, or at least I didn't think you could buy pre-mix. 4-stroke, it had a headlight, it had a kickstand, and this was out in Arizona. And let me tell you about Arizona, okay? I lived out there for a long time. I hated it, I really did. But I say that kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth, because realistically, that time in Arizona, the first few years when we were out living in Yuma, was some of the best times doing off-road stuff, man. We'd go out to the sand dunes all the time. And most people had their 250s, their 2-stroke, whatnot, paddle tires, big giant rear sprockets for like the most torque you could possibly get, whatnot. And here I am on this pretty much stock 4-stroke 200 XR 200R, but I had an advantage. I had a headlight and a tail light. Didn't have blinkers, but I had those things, so I could ride at night. So when everybody was going to the back to go up Competition Hill and whatnot, their Jeeps and their buggies and their quads and everything else, the 2-stroke guys, not only did they have to leave their shit back at camp, but they had to put it on racks and whatnot because there's no kickstand. Maybe those bikes are too cool to have kickstands. But anyway, but no, and they had to ride with their buddies in their buggies and whatnot to get to the back. They call it, you know, getting back to the hill. Not me. I could ride mine. I could ride mine all the way back. So I was on that thing day and night, nonstop. I loved it. We decided to move from the thriving metropolis of Yuma, Arizona to Tucson. That's what I got to. That's why I had sold the bike. Sold the bike for $500. Made exactly what I paid for it. Oh, let me tell you something else about that bike. Because it was so old. Now we're talking. This is like 2001, right? Because that bike was so old, the shock was just completely worn out on it. And do you think Honda or any other company out there is going to be making replacement shocks for a 20-year-old off-road motorcycle that probably wasn't very popular to begin with? You're damn straight they didn't. So I couldn't ever replace that shock. So I was just riding around in the spring. Basically, I rode that motorcycle in the desert, constantly standing up. Because if you're riding on one of those things with no shock, you're trying to sit down, you're just getting beat all to hell. It's probably going to buck you off like a wild fucking bull somewhere down the line. Not saying that ever happened to me, but it may have happened to me at some point. Anyway, had to sell it, moved to Tucson. I got a wild hair at my ass that, hey, let's give street bikes a try, because I've never ridden a motorcycle legally on the road. I'll emphasize legally, because of course growing up with dirt bikes and whatnot, we always rode dirt bikes on the road. But I mean, come on, I lived in rural East Tennessee. There were no cops out there. Nobody was checking to see if we were doing things on the up and up. So what did I do? Instead of buying another dirt bike, I went with my first street bike, and it was a Yamaha V-Star 650. Shit, I don't remember if it was a 600 or a 650. I'm pretty sure that was a 650 because the Honda Shadow was a 600. I don't remember. One thing that I'll tell you straight up front is that I'm not like this big motorcycle guy that knows every model and every displacement that was ever made. And if you bring up a motorcycle, I'm going to say, oh yeah, that's the one that had, I don't know, piss shooting out of the side of it and sparks and fireworks and everything else, because I just don't know. But anyway, so I got this Yamaha V-Star. I enjoyed it. Man, I went on rides with that thing. It had a lot of power, and it was the V-Star Classic Edition. So it had the windshield mounted to the front. The guy that I bought it from, and it was a few years old at the time, the guy that I bought it from had put some nice little leather bags on it. So I got with some friends in Tucson, and we would ride around the state of Arizona, you know, up to Flagstaff and over to the border of New Mexico and whatnot, doing fun things like that. But even with that, I knew it just didn't have enough. I didn't have any balls, man. I mean, I could go and I could get up to top speed, but it really didn't take off and get up shit and get. That's what it didn't have. It didn't shit and get. So after a while, I don't remember why I sold it, to be honest with you, but I had it for about 3 years. And I sold it, and I immediately went to, this could have been why I sold it, to be honest with you, but I immediately went to another dirt bike. That's where my roots were in motorcycling. This time I did go two-stroke. I got a Honda CR 200, 250. Shit, I don't know. I guess those are CR 200 or 250 since the XR was 200. And that thing was fun, I'm not going to lie. Now, while I agree that the XR was something that I always enjoyed, I did want to give a two-stroke a try again. I remember having a lot of fun on my Suzuki 120 or 125, whatever it was growing up. That was a two-stroke, so I wanted to give it another shot, this time as an adult. So I bought that Honda CR, had a great time. One problem that I had with it was, as you'll see today, and until I meet some folks, I do a lot of things by myself. I don't have a lot of friends, and I don't say that as like, oh, I'm so sad I don't have friends. Yeah, I've been in positions where I've been the life of the party. I've had loads of friends. I could call up anybody almost any time and do anything I wanted to do. But as I've gotten older, you know, more settled in with the family and the career, it's pretty much just me, unless I'm doing things with the family. And about that time, you know, I was trying to find dirt bike trails. We lived in Phoenix. We had moved from Tucson to Phoenix by then. And I was trying to find things to do. And the only spots to really ride without getting in trouble were way out in the desert, like near Scottsdale. And I was by myself, didn't know the terrain very much, didn't have anybody to ever show me the roads out there. So I didn't ever venture off very far. And after doing that a few times, this was like a 45-minute drive with my dirt bike in the back of my little Ford Ranger. Anytime I wanted to ride, it was like a 45-minute drive to get there. I'm riding around for a little while, not knowing where to go, not knowing what to do. So eventually I got tired of that, and I sold it. And I sat on that no bike for, oh, I don't know, a year or so. But then the bug got me again. I'm like, man, I really want to get on the street. Let's look at a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. Now, let's be honest. I feel like the line is so divided out there with motorcyclists, motorcycle enthusiasts. There are people who are Harley-Davidson die-hard fans. That's the only thing they'll ride. That's the only thing they'll look at. And then there are those who have other bikes who have Harley-Davidson penis envy, I guess, if you want to call it that. And then there are folks who just hate Harley-Davidson. Like, hey, I'll never ride one of those machines. I'll always stick to this bike or this Honda or this Triumph. Triumph has gained a lot of popularity over the years. But I'm going to put myself, I'm going to be honest here, I was one of those guys that was in the middle group there. I had my Yamaha 650. I loved that motorcycle. But I always thought that I was less of a motorcyclist because I did not have a Harley Davidson. That's stupid. I mean, that's absolutely dumb. When I look back on it, that doesn't make any sense. Two wheels are two wheels are two wheels, right? And I say that while I'm sitting on my Harley Davidson Road Glide right now. But the mentality that anything other than a Harley Davidson is just trying to be a Harley Davidson, I don't agree with that philosophy anymore, but that's where I was at the time. But again, on a tight budget, what did I do? I wanted to ride around Phoenix. I didn't necessarily see myself going on any road trips. So what did I buy? I bought a 2007 brand new Sportster 883 low. If I remember right, that was the first year that they offered the low. It set like 2 1/4 inches lower than the stock Sportster, which made it look really nice in my opinion. I'll find a picture and throw it up in the video here. It was also the first year of fuel injection, which was kind of fun to get used to. It also made it hard to find pipes for it later because you had to count for that, I guess. Anyway, so I bought that 2007 in October of 2006, and I actually rode that thing. I financed it. I paid that thing off within the allotted time, and I kept it for a couple years after that. And I rode that thing all the way until 2014. So from 2006 to 2014, 8 years worth of having it. Her name was Charlene. Everywhere I went, my buddies all knew, hey, let me take Charlene, or are you coming on Charlene or whatnot. And I got that name from, I'm a big fan of old war movies, and Full Metal Jacket, it's not an old war movie, but it came out in the 80s, so I guess at this point you can call it old. Full Metal Jacket, the crazy fucker at the beginning, Private Pyle, he named his rifle Charlene. I always admired that movie, that first part of it. Not admired it necessarily, but I always liked the boot camp scenes from Full Metal Jacket, so that's where we went. Anyway, so her name was Charlene. I did some work to it. You know, I put 18-inch apes on it, which looked, I liked the way it looked on that little Sporty. I put straight pipes on it, but I had to get a small enough diameter so it had sufficient back pressure for it. Added some chrome things here and there, some black things here and there, some hard leather bags on it. Put a big sissy bar on it with no pad so I could look like a badass and strap all my gear to it when I wanted to go. It was low, so the suspension on it wasn't a hardtail by any stretch, but my God, hitting a bump on that thing and you felt it all the way through your body. So, like I said, my initial intent was to have something to ride around Phoenix, something to scoot around on with my friends and whatnot. What did I end up doing? Well, I joined a motorcycle club. I'm going to talk about motorcycle clubs one day on a separate episode. Where was I at with that? Oh yeah, the Sportster, Charlene. I loved the Charlene so much. That was one of my favorite bikes of all time. Anyway, joined the motorcycle club, and this motorcycle club was very active, you know, all over the United States. They still are. I'm no longer with them, by the way. And we would take rides to San Diego. I lived in Phoenix. We'd take rides to San Diego often, Las Vegas several times. The longest trip I ever went on was to Grand Junction, Colorado. That was like a 700-mile one-way trip. So I would take all these long road trips on my Sportster lowrider with no windshield, no real suspension to speak of because it was so much damn lower than everything else. And I rode that thing pretty hard, man. But one of the reasons I love that bike is because it was always there. Wife and I, during in 2008, when the economy took a dump, about a year later, our family kind of became, I don't like to use the word victim here. What's the word I'm looking for? Anyway, we had some financial trouble in 2009, 2010. It took us a couple of years to get out of it. You know, I lost a few things I'm not proud of, but at the same time, you know, what do you do? A lot of it wasn't my fault. Some of it, you know, in hindsight, I could have handled some things a little better, but one thing that I had throughout that whole time, even if I had shitty cars during that period that didn't work, Charlene was always there. She always ran for me. I did the I'm riding around at 115 degrees outside, but she was always there. So I hated it when people go, oh, that's a girl's bike, or whatever the hell they said. No, that was my bike. That was my ride. But it's a part of me, you know what I'm saying? And finally, in the spring of this year, talked the wife into letting me, well, don't you hate when you have to say that? But it's true. Come on, guys, you know that. Let me look at motorcycles. A buddy of mine in Arizona that I knew for a long time, a guy I used to brew beer with actually, had this beauty right here for sale. And he had it when I was looking around, he had it for sale, relatively significantly under market value. It's 2011 Road Glide, 103-inch motor. I don't know, all the specs don't really matter to me, but, and I love it, man. So I went from a Sportster that I'd get all over the western United States with to this guy. Let me tell you the difference. This thing is a lot heavier, a whole lot heavier than any dirt bike. The V-Star 650, the Sportster 883, this thing's a lot heavier. And because nobody here knows me really, I recently lost nearly 100 pounds. So I'm a lot lighter and the bike is a lot heavier, as one of my brothers pointed out to me. And you know, when I first started riding it back in May, I could really tell. It's like, holy shit, man, this thing's so heavy. And after a while, you get comfortable with it, you get used to it. You know where you're, I don't know what they're called, but they're like tip over points or whatever they're called. You kind of get a feel for where they are. And now I think me and this bike get along pretty well. So here I am, motovlogging, Tampa, Florida. I love it here, absolutely love it here. I actually wanted to get this thing started a few days ago, but it's been storming like hell. Yeah, so let's take a look at what I see